Okay, moving on. So just going back to where I left, if this sounds abrupt, um, go back and look at the video before this where I started talking about creating a peaceful atmosphere for your loved one when they have been diagnosed with terminal illness. So I want to touch quickly on the importance of number one, getting to know your loved one. You know your loved one well, but I want to mention that caring for men is different than caring for women. When it comes to reminiscence, looking back, men enjoy talking about especially their work. Men pride in their work, in their job, what they did when they were younger, when they could. So just especially when it comes to a father, a brother, mostly talk with them about their work life. What did you do for a living? Or how was your job? This and this, and just bring up things to do with their job, with their work. That helps them focus on things that bring them joy instead of focusing on the illness and uh, the end of the road, which is death, which for most people is can be very difficult to deal with. So the reminiscence is, you look back, life reviews, things that mattered to your loved one. So bringing those conversations to life and just getting them engaged around their world, raising children, looking at the children and how much they have grown, looking at their children where they are, and also just be sensitive with whether the successes in life. For example, some of the things that I've dealt with is where a person, an elderly, has children that, let's say, for example, they have a son who is in jail for whatever reason. Try not to bring up such conversations on a regular basis, except when they bring it up and they want to talk about it, then listen and help them process it. So, where there is maybe sickness is another one. When you are working with your loved one, and maybe they have, or someone that you care about, and maybe they have, like, let's say, a child with disability, and they are worried about that child. For my mom, she was worried about my dad. What's gonna happen? How would they do? Would they be taken care of? So these are conversations that you can be sensitive. Either let them bring it up or bring it up in a sensitive way. Always work on your own calmness. Be calm. Remember, we are vehicles. When you are with someone that is terminally ill, they have been diagnosed with terminal illness, you should be very intentional about what you are bringing, because we are vehicles. We carry emotions. We carry feelings. And so being aware, what am I bringing into the environment? So calmness is something you work at. You work at creating for yourself and for others. When you practice calmness, eventually you can master it. So being calm intentionally. Now realize there are times you are going to go in and your loved one has anxiety. They might be anxious. Now, death is the unknown, because People don't die and come back. Maybe there are miracles here and there around the world, but it's not something that people do and then they come back and they practice and then they do it better. We don't know what it's like to die. And so when somebody is going through that process, they can have a lot of anxiety. So the last thing you want to do is go and join in the anxiety and become anxious. Because when you become anxious, it amplifies their anxiety and then they become even more anxious. But what I've done as a chaplain is always go in with self awareness, paying attention to what my worries are, what my feelings are. And when I notice someone is anxious, I start to speak to myself, calm down, bring positive thoughts, bring positive feelings, and you start having conversation within yourself to help the other person, your loved one, calm down, or the person that you care about. And as you do that, the more you can stay steady on your calmness, the more the other person will start to calm down. When you're in their environment and you are staying calm, which is going to take intention. Because when you are not used to being intentional about sensing the environment, it's very easy to get sucked into the anxiety. So you take time to think about what is going on, how am I feeling, and then you create that atmosphere by how by what you are carrying within yourself. Another thing that really helps with creating that atmosphere is a healthy touch. So for my mom, when I was around her, whether she was laying in bed or she was sitting up in a wheelchair or on the couch that she loved to sit on, I would go sit next to her and put my hand in her hand. And let me show you, when someone is sick, when you have a loved one that is sick, or whether it's terminal illness or they are very sick with anything, whether it's malaria, but in time of sickness, touch is very healthy. It brings reassurance and the peace that is needed for someone to know they are not alone. But personal touch is very healing, healthy touch. So putting your hand in the hand of your loved one. Now, one thing you don't want to do is if your loved one is laying down or they are sitting down, you don't want to put your hand on top of their hand because they already don't have that much energy. When you put your hand on their hand, you are putting extra weight on them, which can be very uncomfortable for them. The other thing is, if they feel like they need to move the hand, they may not have the energy to move the hand because your hand is laying on their hand. And the other thing is, if they don't want a touch at that time, it will still be forcing that touch on them, which can make them very agitated, restless. So you want to do it the other way, is turn their hand and put your hand underneath their hand. Let their hand be the one that is on top of your hand, so that if they need to move their hand, they can move it. And you can just keep your hand there. They know it's there. What I've seen, especially as a chaplain, is I've seen where the person that I'm providing presence for will move their hand and then they'll bring it back by themselves and put it in my hand. So just laying your hand down and let their hand be the one that is on top of your hand. It brings healing, It gives them the freedom to keep the hand there if they want it there, and if they don't want it there, then they can move it. Now, work on your own health, because if you are providing care for your loved one and you have feelings of rejection, sometimes we can feel like we are being rejected, and it should not be about how we feel that matter, but you are there as a living sacrifice for your loved one. So your goal should be to do the things that are helpful for your loved one, not for yourself. So it's self-training and awareness and intentionality in I'm here to help my loved one to have peace during this time. So you might provide music if they like music. And if they have been listening to music for a very long time, you might want to ask them, would you like me to turn off the music? Because nobody like to be listening to music 247. So it might be just helpful, even though they love music, it might be helpful to actually turn it off and let them rest. If they are sleeping, turn off all the noises, because silence sometimes is the best option for that peaceful environment. Turn off all the voices, give them silence so that they can just absorb their quiet atmosphere. On occasions when you come in and you realize your loved one is sleeping, but in between the sleep, they are restless, they are moving in restless ways, you can then play very quiet, maybe instrumental music in the background. Never play loud music around a person that is sick or in the dying process. You want to play either instrumental music that is in the background, so it's very soft and subtle, and it's just sounding from the background. That can help them calm down. Also, again, if they are seeming restless in their sleep, you can put your hand under their hand and just with the other hand gently tap them and say, things like, I'm here, I'm praying with you, I'm praying for you, and just quietly talk to them, or you can just quietly just give them that loving touch that can calm them down. Take deep breaths and just gently breathe out. So, as you are centering yourself around them, you are helping them be centered in themselves. So, creating a peaceful atmosphere for your loved one when they are terminally ill, especially towards those last days, when they are weak, they are not able to talk, they are not able to tell you how they are feeling. You can still create that peaceful atmosphere by being very observant. Observe their body language. When everything else fails, the body language might be able to guide you and to tell you what is working and what is not working. You might start talking and realize they are getting agitated. Maybe that's a signal for you to keep quiet. Again, realize it's not that your loved one doesn't love you. Okay, one of the things I have had with family members is it just feels like my mom or my dad doesn't love me. It's not about whether they are loving you or not, because your mother loves you, your father loves you. They may not be able to communicate it in the way that makes sense to you, but realize they are dealing with a lot in their own mind, in their own spirit. At that time, they may not even be thinking about you as much as you want your mother and your father to be thinking about you. At that time, they may not even be thinking about you at all. They don't have the energy to give you what you need when they are facing death. So just be aware of that. And don't feel rejected. If they push you away, don't feel rejected, which is why you read them. Read them from a distance. The more death nears, the more people tend to get closed in. They are more closed, they are more going inward than out here. So when you get too close to them in a way that makes them feel um, pushed down, again, for them, this is death is a spiritual thing. So they become very sensitive in their spirit. And it's not like they are pushing you away because they don't love you. It's because they need the space. So take it as in they have a lot that they are dealing with, and always ask yourself, what can I do to make this experience the best that it can be for them? If it means moving away, sometimes just sit a distance, give them the space, read body language, and see what they need. It might be sometimes that they even need everybody to leave the room and just let them be. We all have those moments. I mean, if you think of your life, you do have those moments when you would rather be left alone. And when we are able to do that, sometimes when I need my quiet time, I either go to my bedroom, to the office, and just be. When a person is very sick, they are terminally ill, especially those last days when they don't have much energy to move around, then it's up to the family and their loved one to watch out for them. Read them, look at their facial expressions, look at their body language. If they seem like they are closed in, you can take it as a sign that they need that space. And you can ask them, would you like to just spend some time alone right now? And the answer might be yes. Then leave them alone for that time. Make sure they are safe. Make sure they are safe. So if they are sitting on a chair, you can suggest maybe, can we help you get on the bed so that you are more comfortable? So ask those kind of questions, and they'll be able to tell you what they need. So we did this with my mom. Again, my mom died in her own home, and during her last month, our family took care of her at home. So unlike in hospitals where the staff there, they are not evil people, but they are overworked, they are understaffed. They have all these other people that they are trying to take care of. So they are not going to be there sitting with your loved one, asking them if they need to be repositioned, if they need to be moved. They are not going to do that because they are trying to move from one person to another. Does this person have their medication? Does that person? So they are very much on the go. But when it's your family, you can be there with your loved one all the time. And you can be helping them. You can be helping each other as a family. Sometimes, even as family members, you might want to take turns so that one person, because being a caregiver can be very overwhelming. So taking turns as a family, giving each other breaks so that you are not feeling overwhelmed and then polluting the environment for your loved one. Also, as caregivers, just being very attentive to yourself. Ask for help. If you don't have enough family, talk with your friends. Find out who can come and be with your loved one for a couple hours so that you can either go lay down and rest. Take resting seriously, because especially with our culture, um, Kenyans, we love to work hard. I mean, it's so hard even now to get my dad to just sit and rest. He's always looking for what needs to be done. What can we do now? My dad is 85 years old. He still is like, what can we do? What do we need to do? And so our own people in Kenya, we love to work all the time. We pride in working, but we need to train ourselves to rest, because when you rest, you center yourself, you are able to provide care better to your loved one. So just taking breaks, taking turns, um, but being very attentive to your loved ones and asking what they need. Again, don't take it as a rejection. As much as possible, take care of your loved one at home, because then you are able to help each other. You are able to provide care for them when they need it. Unlike in the hospital, where they are left alone and attended for hours. So for my mom, we were always there as a family. We were always around her when she was going through her dying process. And yes, I did know that my mom was dying. I did educate my family, and some of my family members took the cues and spent all the time they could with my mom. But it's that being intentional. Do you need to lay down now? Do you need to sit up? Do you want to go outside and bask a little bit in the sun? So asking your loved ones for these cues so that you can help create the best environment that you can for them, is you are creating that peaceful atmosphere for them during their final stages of life on earth. So, as we continue to explore these subjects, again, I do check my inboxes. I do read the messages. I don't respond to inboxes because of Facebook hijacking. So I don't respond, but I do see the messages. I do pray. When you ask for prayers, I pray. So, but I just want you to know the reason that I don't respond to inbox is that as much as possible, I do not want to be hijacked. So just know it's not that I'm ignoring them. Otherwise, let's continue to explore the subject of caring for our loved ones at home when they are going through the final stages of life. It is possible, it is doable. I've been in this field for very many years, and I prayed. And God answered my prayer. We were able to care for my mom in her home, and she died in her home very peacefully. And being around a dying person doesn't cause you to die. Actually, I've heard people say, fear the person that is smiling with you than somebody who is dead. Somebody who is dead cannot harm you. That's a body. But somebody who is smiling with you, that's the person that can hurt you. So don't be afraid of death. My goal is to hopefully inspire you to think differently. Since we can't avoid death, since we can't run away from death, how can we face it with grace and with courage so that we can give the best to our loved ones? And also, when our time comes, how can we prepare? Because it's going to come. No matter how much we run away from it, no matter how much we avoid the subject, the day will eventually come. It's not thinking about it that is going to make it happen. What thinking about it does is it helps you prepare so that when that time comes, you're not struggling with. So, one of the things that I've watched in my years of um, providing counseling and spiritual care during the end of life is those final moments, most people that, and again, my focus is during terminal illness because that is when mostly people know that death is nearing. But there are many people who ignore it until those final moments. And then when they actually really start to feel very sick and like this is actually happening, then they start to scramble to try to do things in a hurry. And it's very heartbreaking because you watch people having very restless moments at the end because they are trying to scramble to do things that final couple days, and it doesn't work out that way. So the sooner you can prepare, the better it becomes. So for my mom, as I was having these conversations with her, we talked about her death. We talked about where she wanted to get buried after she died. We talked about the things that she wanted to see done before she died. We talked about all these things. And it was really amazing because everything my mom asked for it happened before she died. She was able to actually see to the last thing that she wanted to see before she died. And her death was very peaceful. She died not scrambling, not fighting for breath. Her last days were spent singing. Jo moyo motoriande. I don't know how that song goes. And other songs like God hears our prayers. She was constantly praying. She wanted to pray the Lord's Prayer. She was praying for her family. But her last weeks and her last days were spent singing songs of worship, praying to God. Um, that's how her last final moments were spent. Why? Because she had taken care of her business. She took care of her business. She gave away everything. By the time my mom took her last breath, she had nothing to her name. She had given everything that she had out. And so, because she took care of her business, she talked about her husband who really mattered to her and what her wishes were. Her death was very peaceful. So I encourage you to really explore these conversations because thinking about them is not going to make death come quicker. We have been deceived through history that if we talk about things, they'll happen. There's a certain way of talking about things. Okay, so like negativity. If I keep telling myself, oh, I'm such a failure, I'm good for nothing, those kind of negative talks will breed life. They'll cause bad things to happen for you. But talking about the realities of life, like death wishes, um, family wishes, it doesn't make it happen. Like I've shared before, I became a chaplain when I was barely 31 years old. I was barely 31 years old. And at that time, I was mandated in clinical pastoral education to write my own funeral service. It was not easy, but I wrote it, writing my will. And I wrote that. And it was not easy. Um, but it helped me realize. And by the way, so I wrote my funeral service. I was barely 31 and I'm still here. Many years since, I'm still here. So I say this to tell you, we are so afraid of death. At the end of the day, even with death, there is still life because death, oh death, where is your sting? Because when you are a believer in Christ, you know death is not the end. Paul was always conflicted with wanting to go and be with Jesus because it's a far much better life. So my goal is to encourage us, our people, to think differently so that we can, the loved ones who have raised us, they've taken care of us when we needed them the most. How can we take care of them when they need us the most? And that's my goal for dealing with this subject. Is I have seen it work for many people that I've walked the journey with as a hospice chaplain, but I've also seen it work for my own mother. And I want to encourage you because we can make the best of even our worst situations. Otherwise, the Lord bless you, and we'll see you next time.